Choose your destiny.
I ain't feeling your side.
I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? KCE, King Chaka.
King Chaka ENT. Y'all can check out the music on Spotify, Apple, and other services. Hey, how y'all doing out there? How y'all feel? Remember, an educated and united public cannot be controlled. Get organized. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Podemos ayudarnos más? Sí se puede. Name of the show today is Lazy Overrides Logic. I don't know. I'm really tired, so I don't know about the monologue. I'll probably get back to it and explain that. But I need to get warmed up and get into the groove here. So I'm going to start with some scrolling. Let me read this right quick. Am I sharing? Man, can y'all hear me? Hopefully y'all can hear me. It says, my heart breaks for men who allow fragile and inconsequential beliefs from others hold them back from the safety, security, reassurance, and connection that is a good hug. You deserve a good hug, not just because you're sad or going through something, but because you're loved. This kind of caught my eye because the other day we were talking about men crying and how society is not cool with that. And then here's another part of it. It's like hugs, men hugging. So they got a few clips here. It says, let's show this all the love before the strange. They are emasculating our men, folks come along. Yeah. So you emasculated if you hug. This is a cool ass picture right here. This is LL Cool J and Jay-Z when he was really young. Hugging. This one is Poitier Belafonte, shot by Gordon Parks, 1959. Another one. Another one. Another one. So yeah, men hugging, it's a thing. I remember, my dad died. I was about 22 years old. He was about 51. And I remember to this day, I still remember the last hug. It's something weird about it. I remember our last hug distinctly. It's like a really clear memory. And it's been a long time since he passed. Like over 20 years. And so I don't know. There is something with that. And I remember my uncle, his brother, live out in the country, and we went out there to visit folks in the country. And I remember giving my uncle a hug, and I remember distinctly like this feeling. It was really weird because um I don't know, his body shape was a lot like my dad's. Like it's kind of like, like the bridge in his back, like the little curve in his back that goes down the center of his back. Really, really similar to my dad's. When he gave me a hug, you know how like when you hug, especially guys, like it's like a little thing we do where we like pat the back, kind of. So I distinctly remember like having this eerie feeling that it reminded me of the last hug that I got from my dad. So I don't know. It was something. It was a thing. I didn't tell him about that, but it struck me, and I started acting weird and awkward. I probably should have explained it. He probably would have understood, but I don't know. I guess that's another thing that's related to, men not showing their emotions and stuff. Because I was just kind of like struck, and then my voice was taken away. Like I couldn't speak. So I don't know. That's a thing. And I know I have issues with intimacy, if you will. I really do. I know that about myself, and I don't hug nearly enough. Um, I don't really like to touch people very much. Like I don't know. It's a thing, but it's probably because me being afraid of myself. Because I'm really emotional. And I know that, and I also get attached easily. You know, I don't know. I can't really explain that. It's a way of me protecting myself, I guess, by not hugging. And not being physical with people. You know, it's a strange thing. It makes me weird and awkward in a lot of situations. Um, I don't know. I like to connect with people mentally, you know, and that's where my comfort zone is. So the physical touching part is something I kind of shy away from. I can't explain why. I really can't. I know it's a problem with the people that are close to me, and who's ever been close to me in my life can realize that it's a bit of a problem, you know, and I don't mean any harm by it at all. Like I really wish I could be more physical, and I try to work on it sometimes, but I really have a problem with it. So, like I say, anyone that's close to me can verify or acknowledge that I kind of have an issue with it, with the touching. I don't know. I wish I didn't. It's one of those quirky things about me that I haven't been able to learn how to really deal with. I think it's a psychological issue that I have. Maybe it has something to do with my childhood. Um, I don't know if I want to play this. I don't know if this guy's about to say something good or something. Throw it off. Anyways, Ashanti. Oh my God. Ashanti is killing them. Talk about a distraction. Um, Let me see. So lazy overrides logic. Lazy overrides logic. I think that, you know, you want to accomplish things, you want to do things, but you have to do work to make it happen. And then you trick yourself, you kind of lie to yourself about it. It's kind of related to procrastinating, uh, being unmotivated, you trick yourself and you lie to yourself and you tell yourself stories, and it overrides your logic. It because you know that to get from point A to point B, some effort has to be put in. But then you tell yourself that you can get to point B without putting in effort some kind of way, and that's what I mean by laziness overrides logic, because your brain knows better, but you lie to yourself and you believe the lies because you just don't want to do whatever it is that needs to be done to get you where you need to be, you know? It's the effort, it's the mundane, it's the boring, it's the being physical, it's the, not fun, part of it that just triggers something in your brain to make excuses, to not, to override your logical thinking, 1+1 is 2, and then you tell yourself, no, I can get 2 without adding the 1, like, and you believe it somehow. And then it's like, this is the whole internet right now. Like, it's our whole politics right now. It's the whole generation. It's the way, I don't know, it's the microwave generation. When I was young, we didn't have much. Okay. I came from the struggle. And I remember washing clothes with like a washboard in the bathtub, stuff like that. We didn't have a washer and dryer, I still got weird ways about me with the dishwashers. Like, I don't feel comfortable washing dishes with the dishwasher because I feel like they don't get them clean. So I always hand wash the dishes. Like, I just don't feel like the dishes getting clean in the dishwasher. Like, and it's probably me just being crazy, but it just, I'd rather have the confidence that the plate is clean because I did it with my hands, rather than pushing a button and just, on a wish and a prayer and hoping that that actually got clean. I don't know. And so, but I don't know. I think what I'm trying to highlight is the difference between the my generation and today's generation. They have a lot of buttons they can press, to get the same job done that we had to be more hands-on with, more physical with. And I don't know that it's really a good thing. I really don't. I don't think that it is a good thing. One of the topics I wanted to talk about was, which I probably will get to, was how like privilege leads to it has negative impacts. When you haven't had any adversity, maybe I talked about it already, I just don't remember. But when you haven't had adversity, then you don't know how to deal with problems. You don't know how to deal with situations that come about that are difficult. You there's blessings in the struggle, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. There's benefits to the struggle. Now, everybody's struggle is different. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean being poor and not having money. You have to struggle to do all kinds of things, like freaking filling out an application online or something, doing a search for a YouTube video that you wanted to help you get something done or whatever, a how to or whatever. There's different kinds of struggles, and those struggles make you better, is what I'm trying to say. When you don't have those struggles, when you give up, then you still haven't developed those skills needed to deal with situations. And no matter what, like whether we're in the future or the past, whether we have a button to press for the dishwasher, if you don't have the effort that you want to put in to even press the button on the dishwasher, then the dish is still not going to get clean. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, you got to put in that effort to do that. That's a bit of a struggle. for some people. You know what I'm saying? What I'm trying to say is that the struggle is how you build skills, the pain, the mundane, the boring, the grind. Anyways, I feel like I'm losing y'all. I'm going in circles. I'm tired. Let me share Twitter. And let me see. Let's play this. Okay.
And a memo you probably never heard of. In 1971, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce asked Powell, who'd go on to become a Supreme Court justice, to draft a memo on the state of the country. Powell's memo argued that the American economic system was under broad attack from consumer, labor, and environmental groups. In reality, these groups were doing nothing more than enforcing the implicit social contract that had emerged at the end of the Second World War. They wanted to ensure corporations were responsive to all their stakeholders, workers, consumers, and the environment, not just their shareholders. Powell and the chamber saw it differently. In his memo, Powell urged businesses to mobilize for political combats and stressed that the critical ingredients for success were joint organizing and funding. The chamber distributed the memo to leading CEOs in large businesses and trade associations, hoping to persuade them that big business could dominate American politics in ways not seen since the Gilded Age. And it worked. The chamber's call for a business crusade birthed a new corporate political industry. Practically overnight, tens of thousands of corporate lobbyists and political operatives descended on Washington and state capitals across the country. I should know. I saw it happen with my own eyes. I worked at the Federal Trade Commission. Jimmy Carter had appointed consumer advocates to battle big corporations that for years had been diluting or injuring consumers. Yet almost everything we initiated at the FTC was met by unexpectedly fierce political resistance from Congress. At one point, when we began examining advertising directed at children, Congress stopped funding the agency altogether. I was dumbfounded. What happened? In 3 words, the Powell Memo. Lobbyists and their allies in Congress, and eventually the Reagan administration, worked to defang agencies like the FTC and to staff them with officials who would overlook corporate misbehavior. Their influence led the FTC to stop seriously enforcing antitrust laws, among other things, allowing massive corporations to merge and concentrate their power even further. Washington was transformed from a sleepy government town into a glittering center of corporate America, replete with elegant office buildings, fancy restaurants, and 5-star hotels. Meanwhile, Justice Lewis Powell used the court to chip away at restrictions on corporate power in politics. His opinions in the 1970s and 80s laid the foundation for corporations to claim free speech rights in the form of financial contributions to political campaigns. Put another way, without Lewis Powell, there'd probably be no Citizens United, the case that threw out limits on corporate campaign spending as a violation of the free speech of corporations. These actions have transformed our political system. Corporate money supports platoons of lawyers, often outgunning any state or federal attorneys who dare stand in their way. Lobbying has become a $3.7 billion industry. Corporations regularly outspend labor unions and public interest groups during election years, and too many politicians in Washington represent the interests of corporations, not their constituents. As a result, corporate taxes have been cut, loopholes widened, and regulations gutted. Corporate consolidation has also given companies unprecedented market power, allowing them to raise prices on everything from baby formula to gasoline. Their profits have jumped into the stratosphere, the highest in 70 years. But despite the success of the Powell Memo, big business has not yet won. The people are beginning to fight back. First, antitrust is making a comeback. Both at the Federal Trade Commission and the Justice Department, we're seeing a new willingness to take on corporate power. Second, working people are standing up. Across the country, workers are unionizing at a faster rate than we've seen, including at some of the biggest corporations in the world. And we're winning. Third, campaign finance reform within reach. Millions of Americans are intent on limiting corporate money in politics, and politicians are starting to listen. All of these tell me that now is our best opportunity in decades to take on corporate power at the ballot box, in the workplace, and in Washington. Let's get it done.
I wish I was as optimistic as Dr. Robert Wright. I feel like the lobbyists, they've taken over, and I also feel like it's like a snowball going down a mountain. It's just building and building and getting bigger and stronger and faster, and the people are going along with it. The people are what's giving it the energy. I think that a lot of people don't understand how much power they have. The people are the gears. The people are the cogs in the machine. The people are the oil. We're what makes it go. And when we make arguments for these corporations, which we do all the time without even knowing it, that's how these things keep going the way that they're going. Like when we don't find solidarity with our, friends, neighbors, coworkers, when we are always trying to like I say, defend the corporations and take their side or whatever, like we're gonna, like we can be Chase Bank one day or something. Like it's an insane thought, that if we screw over our friends, neighbors, and family, that one day we can have a chance to be like Chase Bank. Like Chase ain't gonna never allow you to compete with them, no matter what. You don't have a chance to do that, So then then maybe you think that I could just get a bit of it, and then I'll have more than my friends, neighbors, relatives, or whatever, so that I can be doing better than them. And like I say, you end up defending the corporations, and you end up allowing them, helping them to do what they do. If it wasn't for us, they wouldn't be able to do the things that they do. It's really simple as that. It's like my argument I try to make about going to Walmart, and it's like, oh, they got cheaper prices, or oh, it's convenient, or whatever is your reason for going there. But then, like way back in high school, I wrote a paper about Walmart, and it's clear how parasitic that company is, and so, but they wouldn't be so powerful if you didn't continue to go to Walmart, if you could just skip it. If there's lots of other places that you can go to buy whatever it is you wanted to buy. But you've been brainwashed, you've been programmed. It's easy, it's simple, it's cheaper, and then a lot of times those aren't even true, But again, all of the patrons, like we talk about going through the self-checkout lines, this is what causes them to hire fewer people. I mean, I wish that people could try to understand the connection between their day-to-day activities and how things go in the world. The decisions that you make, like deciding to go through the self-checkout line, or deciding to go to Walmart, or deciding to order something off of Amazon, or whatever it is. All of these choices that you make, the people, it's an accumulation of choices and decisions that the people have made that gets us to the results that we have. Okay. So it's really true, but they make you feel like you're powerless. They tell you that you're powerless, that it doesn't matter, what you do, Meanwhile, they're leaving out the back door with the bag. Meanwhile, they're paying their employees trash. Meanwhile, they're laying off half of the employees. Meanwhile, the bank's failing and getting bailed out again, And then the argument online about like, oh, it was President Trump, or oh, it was Biden, or whatever. Like, let's look at what the hell really freaking happened. You know what I'm saying? Stop putting the identity on it. Let's look at what actually happened, with the banks. They were allowed to be shady, as a result of deregulation. You know what I'm saying? And then again, there goes the argument where people defend the corporations. It's like they're like, the regulations cost them money. So is that coming out of your pocket? Why are you so adamant about looking out for the damn corporation? Like, oh my God, it costs them money to these regulations are costing them money. What does that matter to you? Like, is that money coming out of your pocket? Like, get all the way up out of here. Like, the banks were allowed to be shady because they got the regulations were cut. Now, who was in there is kind of beside the point. Let's look at what actually happened so that we can fix it, regardless of who's in there, which party is in there, which president it was. They're all culpable. My stance on this. Two wings of the same bird. That's the case, period. They work together to fly around and screw the people. They're freaking rioting in France. Let me see. Before I get to that, let me play this because I think this is good. I only got to hear a little bit. Let's see.
Plus, anti-women, anti-bills and laws are being is the scariest nationalist group you've never heard. Buckle the fuck up. For over a year now, I've been investigating behind all of the anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ+, anti-women, anti-BIPOC bills and laws are being passed in this country. And I've told you about the Alliance Defending Freedom, the ADF, who is behind a lot of the bills. But if they are a henchman, the Council for National Policy is the fucking mob boss. Let me tell you about them. The New York Times describes the CNP as a little-known club of a few hundred of the most powerful conservatives in the country who meet 3 times a year behind closed doors at undisclosed locations for a confidential conference. They are so secretive that you can only attend with the unanimous approval of executive committee, and members are instructed to not even refer to the organization by name, like it's fucking Fight Club. And because reality is stranger than fiction, they were founded in 1981 by the author of the Left Behind series, Tim LaHaye. To tell you more about them, we need to go back in the past. We have to go all the way back to 1845 when the Southern Baptist Convention was started. The Southern Baptists were created because they branched away from Baptists over slavery. Southern Baptists supported slavery. The Southern Baptist Convention remained apart from other Protestant denominations during the war, and in 1962, the Supreme Court ended public school prayer. Now they are mad. It's at this time that the Southern Baptists realized that with the shifting demographic of America, that they might be irrelevant very soon. They could not have it that way. So the Southern Baptist Church plotted to get into politics. And in 1979, Southern Baptist preacher Jerry Falwell, who was for segregation, he was vehemently opposed to racial integration in academy. He decided to convene a meeting with some other pastors, as well as Republican operative Paul Weyrich, who co-founded the Heritage Foundation, and Falwell, Weyrich, Pat Robinson, Tim LaHaye, the author of the frickin' Left Behind series, and presidential Ronald Reagan got together. They started a little 501c3 organization called the Council for National Policy, which is now a network of evangelicals, oil barons, gun lobbyists, and Republican operatives working to dismantle the social safety net and civil liberties that we have today. And some of its more prominent members today include the Koch brothers and the DeVos family. Leaders of this group have included Tony Perkins, the head of the LGBT bashing Family Research Council, who was vice president for a year and is still on its board of governors. Tony Perkins, who once claimed that gay people recruit children and secretly published a mailing list for a candidate he was managing from former Klan leader David Duke. Also on the CNP's board of governors is Michael Perotka. Perotka was for many years on the board of the League of the South, a neo-Confederate hate group that advocates for a newly secluded South ruled by white people. Another board member is Matt Staver, leader of the Anti-LGBT Liberty Council, who has worked for the recriminalization of homosexuality and calls the Boy Scouts a playground for child abusers. He likened LGBT activists to terrorists. And there's Alan Sears, the founder of, oh look, Alliance Defending Freedom, the AD-fucking-F. The entire group seeks a fusion of fundamentalist theology with American civic life. They believe that this country was founded by Christians like them, generally natural-born citizens and white. This group owns media outlets. You might recognize this CNP member, Charlie Kirk, who runs something called Turning Point USA. The Daily Caller is also owned by members of the Council for National Policy, and so is Breitbart. Guess what other organization is a part of the CNP? The fucking National Rifle Association, the NRA. The Seven Mountains Mandates, ADF, Moms of Liberty, ALEC, they are all arms of this fucking monster, the CNP. They backed Ted Cruz on his presidential run because his dad, Rafael Cruz, was one of the founding fucking members. Amy Coney Barrett, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Ted Cruz, they've all been speakers at CNP conferences. You know, those secret conferences that they're not even allowed to say the dang name of or even disclose where they're having it. Yeah. All this time, the Republicans talking about how there's a shadowy government. It was them all the time. The CNP, the Council for National Policy. Remember that name. Notice it when it pops up in articles or on news stations, because that is the organization that is behind all the shit that is trying to turn America into a white supremacist, Christian nationalist, fascist shithole. The CNP.
I think it's something to what she was saying, but I hate it when people point fingers at one side or the other, because it leads to just people arguing. Let me see. Did they have some comments that's worth a crap on this? One comment says the whole thing makes 100% sense and was basically in the back of my mind, not this group, but this overall theory. Another comment says there are many of these such groups clustered around SCOTUS building on C Street, Capitol, etc. They all know one another and are now buying up more buildings to have RW commune. I don't know, it's like he was talking in codes there. Another one, it says Shadow Network is a good investigative deep dive for their recent activity, but their founders have the powerful groups that have influenced and in ways reshaped Christianity in the Western world for the political means, and people don't even realize. Another comment, it says she did a great job delivering all that in a TikTok. There's a doc on Prime and Apple by ... that lays it all out, and I think everyone should watch it. The author of the most comprehensive book on the CNP. There's a YouTube link there. I don't know. Whenever I hear like it's transgender people grooming the kids, or it's gay people grooming kids, I automatically be like, well, I see a lot of cases where straight people do the same thing. So what is your point? So it's like they want to put pedophilia or the grooming of kids, they want to put it on transgender people. They want to put it on gay people or whatever. Like, and that's like the real big, huge thing online, push or whatever. But again, I think people are turning off part of their brain when they get ignited by this, because all of the examples of straight people doing it is left out of the conversation. So what are we talking about here? That gay people they're the only ones doing it, or they're the ones who it hurts my brain. It really does. I'm really sorry, but that hurts my brain when I hear those comments. Let me see. Where the hell is everybody tonight? I'm sorry for being late. Oh, yeah, they put a warrant against Putin over alleged war crimes. Wait, somebody's in here. We got Doc. What's up, Doc?
Hey. Give me a minute.
Plus,
News. And some more breaking news to bring you in the last few moments. International Criminal Court judges have issued arrest warrants against the Russian President Vladimir Putin. We don't have any more details than that at the moment to bring you, but we will bring them to you as we get them.
so the International Court is bringing charges on Putin for war
Some more breaking
crimes.
news to bring you.
And so
Well,
that's
good.
the
Maybe a
thing.
few of our
Let me
ex-presidents
see.
need that too.
Yeah, see, that's the argument. I have a clip that breaks that down too, because they talk about.
I'm not anti-44. I mean, just saying, but I just have to point out the fact that the man accepted the Nobel Peace Prize on the same day he ordered the bombs dropped in 7 countries.
Yeah.
I mean, like I say,
Yeah,
I don't mean to
so-
go. I don't mean to go at him first. That is just one of the biggest ironies from the last 30 years, I think.
And whenever they give out awards to people, I always be like, it's, and they make statues of them. It's like, it's usually some, they make it look like it's because they did a good thing, but I don't think so. I really don't. It's the opposite every time, I think, Obama did his job, and that's why he got the Nobel Peace Prize.
Man, I took a 30-day vacation off of Facebook because I was complaining about Caitlyn Jenner getting a Woman of the Year award when she hadn't even been a woman for a year.
Like that's so ridiculous.
I'm allowed to say that without getting kicked off now, but I wasn't then.
I mean, and the women should be the ones that should be upset about that. Like, come on, like that is ridiculous. Let me read this. It says, laughable. When will the ICC issue arrest warrants for war criminals like George W. Bush, Tony Blair, Barack Obama for illegally invading and bombing Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, etc., and slaughtering millions of innocent people? So that was this guy's comment, because Reuters headline, it says ICC judges issue arrest warrant for Putin over war crimes in Ukraine. So that is what the big one of the big news stories that just came out. So this one, it says, speaking of the arrest warrant issued for Putin, Bush Jr., Obama, and Clinton authorized military operations 23 times, killing more than 11 million people in total. The policy of selectivity of the Centers of European Repression is striking in its cynicism and partial blindness. This video shows, let me play some of this. It says, beginning of the shock and awe campaign. Shots being fired over Baghdad. So this was some coverage that was done when that happened. I remember all of this. It was so crazy, man. They hung that dude Saddam Hussein, and it was live on television. I was sitting on the couch watching that shit happen. And I was like, I can't believe that this is on TV. How the hell did they get away with that? Like, it was kids watching this shit on TV. Anyways, let me see. I'm losing it here. This one, it says, on this day, March 16th, 1968, the U.S. troops in Vietnam killed hundreds of unarmed Vietnamese civilians. More than 500 people were killed by the U.S. in what is today popularly known as the My Lai massacre. This is just one of many atrocities committed by the U.S. in Vietnam. So it was mostly women and children, and they were there looking for combatants, but they found a town full of women and children, and they did what they do. So that's what this one says. 55 years ago today, American soldiers committed mass massacre and rape in a small Vietnamese village known as My Lai for about 100 U.S. GIs and officers were looking for Viet Cong soldiers in the village, but there were only women, girls, children, and old men. This region was labeled as Pinkville by Americans, meaning it was allegedly pro-communist. Thus, a search and destroy operation was initiated. When the American platoon couldn't find any enemy combatants, it went crazy. U.S. soldiers just shot children, old men, and old women. Young girls and women were shot to death. Bodies were dumped into ditches, and the entire village was burned to the ground. American military committed such atrocities numerous times during the Vietnam War, but were always covered up, usually by claiming that civilians were inadvertently killed during a battle with the enemy army. My Lai massacre was so heinous that a couple of people spoke up. However, only one soldier was convicted, and he spent 3 days in jail and 3 years in house arrest. Yeah, so, but, and I don't want to give Putin a pass either, you know. It's crazy how they can be so one-sided when they talk about these things, you know. Putin commits wars, and let's hold
the real problem with this is
him accountable.
You know, the real problem with this, we've already discussed it. Good, bad, whatever. Putin is psychotic. I mean, it doesn't matter what side of this right or wrong you are on him. It is, you have to admit, the guy is nuts. I mean, there's definitely bad things going on here. That being aside, why would you want to further back this man in a corner? He's already threatened
exactly
that he has advanced weapons. He's already said, don't dig any deeper in this. If he loses, something bad's going to happen. If the world puts him in a corner to where it's us or them, or we're going to go, this guy is going to go, well, let's take them with me. He is that friggin' nuts. What this is this a ploy? This is a ploy. This is a coup attempt on Russia by the world. They say, we don't care who's there. Get Putin out. That's what they're saying.
Yeah,
and he's got pressure coming from his side too.
Saying, let's play this one right quick.
Very, we trust since the very beginning and taken a lot of abuse for it. Where do you think this conflict stands tonight?
That's what that blue fucking line.
Well, the Ukrainians are being crushed. Even the Washington Post and the New York Times are now finally beginning to print the truth. Their casualties are horrific. We've effectively seen the Russians destroy 3 separate armies built by the Ukrainians. And everyone is beginning to wonder what's really happening. The truth is coming out that this war was not started by Russia, that Russia begged us not to try and drag Ukraine into NATO. We ignored Russia, and Russia made it very clear that they were going to defend their national interest. All they wanted was neutrality for Ukraine. Americans know something else, and I think somebody said this a few years ago. It's the economy, stupid. And every Republican candidate understands that and are worried about.
I see Lindsey Graham invoke Ronald Reagan, who won the Cold War with a superior economy and not with tanks. That's true. Ignore the fact that our banks are collapsing. How exactly do you think people like Graham and virtually every Republican senator, with a few honorable exceptions, how do they think we're going to afford a war against Russia and China simultaneously?
Well, it's unaffordable. It's unaffordable against Russia. You don't have to lump China with the rest of them. It's impossible. We are on the road to bankruptcy. The American people sense it. The bank bailouts are not going to happen as they did before. The best thing I can think of is to say that Lindsey Graham and his peers in Washington, they're not channeling Ronald Reagan. They're channeling the Three Stooges. The last thing Americans need is a war. No more political and military incompetence, ineptitude, corruption. They want an economy that works, and they're not going to stand around and watch the financial system go under. They want real leadership, not a cardboard cutout president.
If we actually followed Lindsey Graham's advice and attacked the Russian Air Force and, of course, immediately became embroiled in a hot war with Russia, how long before you were arrested?
Man, Tucker Carlson.
Like him or hate him, he is a good troll. He gets under your skin to the point where you go out and look for ways to contradict him, and then you start finding out he's actually kind of a lot of stuff he says is not that far off. Now he messes around, but
why he has like the top rated show.
If you actually go back and watch when you do your own research and stuff, if you go back and watch his face as he's saying some of these, you can start seeing where you want to look stuff up, because he'll say it and he gets a tight, thin lip, like he's trying not to crack up. Like, it's like, oh yeah, that's going to be funny.
Yeah.
I mean, because I've been watching him. I liked him a lot for a while, and everyone's, oh, he brainwashes, oh, he's this, oh, he's so horrible, he's so horrible. And it's like, I couldn't figure out what they were saying. And then I realized, oh, they think that he's actually an informative journalist and not a commentary. They actually think that he means everything he says.
And that's what all of our news have become. It's all just commentary. And people are taking commentary as facts.
That's like with us believing that we actually believe everything that we say on this show. I mean, we deliberately take the other sides of our beliefs sometimes just because we're trying to find the conversation.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I know I've done it a few times. I know you've done it a few times.
Yeah, I do it. The people are confused. They don't know what's news and what's commentary. Like all of the news is bobbing talking heads, giving their opinions, with very little like facts or very little like actual information. Like, people get bored to death when you just give them the information. All they want to hear is somebody's opinion on it. It's a sad state of affairs. This clip, it says, Assad, I believe that World War III is underway, but different in form. Wars are going in the direction of proxy wars. Zelensky now wages war on behalf of the West with his army of Nazis. Same thing, terrorist armies acting on behalf of the West, as in Syria and elsewhere. Oh yeah, I don't have to play it because that's what he said in the clip. It was something I wanted to share, but I done lost it. It was right up in here. Man, forgive me, y'all. I'm tired. I worked all day today. This one, it says, here since Israeli occupation forces killed U.S. peace activist Shukori in Gaza as she blocked them from Palestinian homes. This is a really sad story. I don't think I want to play that. It says Zelensky's forces are running out of munitions despite billions of dollars flowing in Ukraine. Where's all the money going? You can't have an audit, because if you do want an audit of where your money is going into the most corrupt country in Europe, you're a tool of Putin. So there goes Tucker again, being pretty on point. Let me play this one.
Are completely, they're basically just handmaidens to power at this point. They're not even pretending. But if you're paying any attention at all, if you thought for even a moment, I'm a journalist, I should cover the news, you might notice that they were getting, to charitably put it, mixed messages from people in power. For example, here's Mark Milley today explaining that Ukraine is armed to the teeth with American weaponry.
2 weeks ago, the United States released another security assistance package, HIMARS, ammunition, artillery, vehicle maintenance, and vehicles. The Ukrainian soldiers wear the blue and yellow of the Ukrainian flag, but the colors of 50 other nations that met today stand beside Ukraine to support the principles of the rules-based international order.
Look how afraid that man looks. I almost want to play the tape again. Go back and look at that on the internet. That man is afraid. What's he afraid of? It'd be interesting to know. But what he just told us is we've sent a huge amount of material to Ukraine, artillery, ammunition, 100 billion. So that would suggest that the Ukrainian military has a lot of equipment. They're well armed. Oh, but no, at the very same time that Mark Milley's telling us that, the Pentagon just yesterday informed us that actually Ukraine is running out of munitions.
There's reports out there from the battlefield that the Ukrainians are running out of munitions. They're having shortages. Is that a concern for the Pentagon, and what's the Pentagon doing to alleviate that problem?
Yeah, so as we've been doing since the beginning of this campaign, we're continuing to do everything that we can to ensure that we're meeting Ukraine's needs, whether it's ammunition, whether it's air defense, armor. You've heard us talk extensively about that. Tomorrow's discussion, of course, will be another opportunity to bring the international community together to focus on Ukraine's most urgent needs, to include ammunition.
Okay, so leaving aside the fact, the dead certain fact that the U.S. military probably should have enough of its own ammunition, now they're all invoking Ronald Reagan. Remember, peace through superior firepower, weakness invites aggression. Speaking of weakness, the U.S. military increasingly is weak. And part of the reason, there are a number of reasons, but one of them is we're sending all the stuff to Ukraine. So there's the military question that no one seems to have answered, but there's also an economic question. Where's all the money going? So we've spent more than Russia's typical annual military budget in Ukraine, and yet the Ukrainian military is out of ammunition again? Okay. That might be a question for Zelensky. Where's all the money going? You're on the phone with BlackRock all day. Where's all the money going? People are getting very rich. You can't have an audit, because if you want an audit of where your money is going into the most poor country in Europe, you're a tool of Putin.
What do you think?
Pretty much what we've been saying the whole time.
Mhm.
But what's interesting,
Where is the money? Why aren't people asking those questions?
Well, you
Nobody
know,
really
like
cares.
I said, all
like
that
the
money going
taxpayers, like-
in. Go ahead.
It's the taxpayers' money. Like, they should care, right? Oh, shit.
Well, you know, that's why BlackRock, between all the money they're getting now and the fact they already have the rebuilding contract for a certain number of years after it's declared over. So that rebuilding contract hadn't even started yet. That's why they're not going to have to sell all the houses that they bought across America at inflated cash value during the pandemic. because they can wait out a recession, a housing recession now. Keep the housing prices up artificially because all of those are rental houses now or whatever they're doing with them because they're not selling them, they're keeping them. I've got a feeling that we got a whole bunch of refugees probably living in them, which means they actually bought all those houses a year to 2 years in advance of knowing that they were going to fill them up with refugees from somewhere. Just my little brain spiral going, you know?
Well, I know it's a lot of craziness happening. Oh yeah, this is the one. It
But
says
see,
this is
those
go
houses,
ahead.
since there's refugees in them, the U.S. government pays 10 to 30% above market rate for rental. Since they were bought at an inflation point, pushing the market up, they can use that highest market point, even if the market crashes. Well, it was worth this when we bought it, so this is the rental value of it. So the value could say be $1,000 a month. They pushed it up to $1,500 a month. Government's going to pay them $1,800. The recession hits, the area drops down to $800 a month. But since it was evaluated at that at the beginning of the contract, they keep getting that. The government can't get a better price for it.
Let me read this. Russia MFA spokeswoman. It says, is anyone in the West conducting an inventory of what has been plundered and smuggled out from Iraq? Of course not. These artifacts will remain in the West forever, just like those smuggled out by the British and other Westerners from Greece and Egypt. Egyptian and Greek museums and state agencies have been demanding, requesting, pleading, and begging for a long time that the West return their cultural legacy. However, the answer they get is always the same. It isn't yours anymore. And Afghanistan,
I
all
have
of
a
the stuff that
defense
they
of
left in
looting.
Afghanistan.
I have a defense of looting Iraq and Afghanistan for artifacts and stuff like that. The Shiarists, the ISIS, the fundamental hardcore jihadists destroy holy relics as being blasphemies. That's one of the things they used to go around and destroy ruins and holy sites and stuff in the desert. Some of our American teams were actually dispersed to protect things like that, because they would come in, like, you know, the obelisks with the writing on them, they would come in and just shoot them up and blow them up, because anything that is not about a religion to Allah is to a false god, is hearsay and therefore needs to be destroyed. So yeah, these holy and religious relics, if left there in the hands of the Taliban, the Sharia law and stuff like that, would not be put in museums. They would be destroyed.
I'm all over the place today. This should give us something to talk about, though.
That doesn't give any kind of argument as for not giving back Egyptian, Greek, and all that kind of art stuff.
Yeah,
they're going to take them and put them in museums. They're not going to take them in. And now here's the real reason why we're not giving them back. It makes us too much. It makes the museums too much money when they rent them out to other museums for tours.
Yeah, it's all about the money, the economic benefit of it. So, but then the people where the regions where this stuff came from, those people aren't benefiting. You know, it's just another way of like how the privatizing like resources, you know, and making money off of, you know, other people's stuff, other people's resources.
Dude,
It's another way of colonizing.
Historical artifacts and stuff like that were made very, very popular by the Christians. I mean, you got to remember, every single Catholic altar has to have a relic of some sort in it. As part of being every new Catholic church, when they bless that altar, when that altar goes in, there is a relic inside that altar.
Yeah, that's what gives it its authenticity. I get it.
Now, I don't know if it always has to stay in there. I don't know about it pretty much beyond it having to be that way. Yeah, I learned that when I was studying stuff about the church for trying to write up my own deity system for my game world.
Did you hear about it? Went viral. The chick, Brianna Joy Gray asked the chick, "What is woke?" and she couldn't answer, and that went all over the internet. I don't know if you saw it, and I shared this particular video in the chat.
I don't think this one is very new.
Yeah,
the interview, that exchange, it may be getting pointed out now, but I think the exchange actually happened a couple months ago. Or there's been other exchanges like that, because she does that to people all the time.
Yeah, I think it's fairly new because it was all down my timeline.
The new way to chump the left is look at them and go, define it. Tell me what you're talking about.
The same way on the right. It's the same way to break up the right. It's the same thing, because everybody is making arguments and they don't have no really like they're just repeating talking points.
9 times out of 10, someone on the right can at least respond to it. They don't sit there and go, well,
this lady was coming from the right, and she couldn't define what her own definition of woke. Like I'm just gonna play a little bit of this. Check it.
There's just so many levels to the word.
There is one definition of woke that's emerged about whether there is a single definition of wokeness. And this is the point. Now, of course, I'm alluding to our viral with author Bethany Mandel, who co-authored a book about a war the left is allegedly waging on American children. In case you haven't seen the interview, which now has a Washington Post write-up, 2 Daily Beast write-ups, and a Huffington Post write-up, which has been viewed over 7 million times on Twitter. In her interview, Mandel used the term woke repeatedly to describe the nature of this war on children. So in an effort to better understand her specific grievance, I asked her how she defined the word. Here's the now viral clip.
Consider themselves very liberal, and probably fewer of them consider themselves to be woke. And so, when we talk about traditional,
what does that mean to you? Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, I mean, woke is sort of the idea that this is going to be one of those moments that goes viral. I mean, woke is something that's very hard to define, and we've spent an entire chapter defining it. It is sort of the understanding that we need to totally reimagine and redo society to create hierarchies of oppression. It's hard to explain in a 15-second soundbite.
Now, I want to be really clear. I did not intend for this to be a gotcha moment. I asked her to define woke because I wanted to know in good faith. And that's because I know that many people take that word to mean many different things. And I wanted to figure out whether I might agree with her on certain points, as I had done earlier in the interview. Alternatively, I wanted to be able to articulate why we differed on other aspects of her argument without devolving into the typical shouting matches that go, woke is bad, no, woke is good. Oh no, you just don't know what woke really means. Say what you want about me, but I don't exactly have a reputation of being a woke scold. I spent a good part of my career as a leftist journalist critiquing what I believe to be certain overreaches of the left that, in my view, undermine important substantive fights for racial, gender, and economic equality. My very first 2 viral articles as a journalist were critiques of weaponized identity politics and of cultural appropriation discourse. In those articles, I questioned whether the gender and or race of politicians like Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris were in fact being used to insulate them from legitimate concerns about their records on criminal justice issues, or in Clinton's case, her choice of an anti-choice VP. I highlighted the perversity of Clinton using, dare I say, a kind of wokeness to excuse not regulating the banks more harshly in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. Well, breaking up the banks and racism was a line she used to push back against Bernie's call for greater punishment for the bankers that destroyed the economy. And it's perverse for obvious reasons. Black people suffered disproportionately during the housing crisis, as more Black wealth was rooted in real estate than was the case for other racial groups. Not only would breaking up the banks literally help Black people, but nothing in Hillary's policy agenda was geared toward curing racism anyway. It was a rhetorical deflection that weaponized a sincere investment in traditional wokeness, e.g. racial equality, to do the exact opposite, protect the banks at the expense of people of color and working class people more.
So that's how they use it. And that's the reason why I don't like to use the word woke. Like, I don't use that in my discourse. Like, I don't use the word because it causes confusion. And it's like, so like originally, like we could go to like the basic etymology of the word is being awake, right? Like being aware, you know what I'm saying? Being aware of things, but it has taken on a new meaning, especially, today, like the right uses this woke all the time, saying like it's a negative thing. So it's like, how can being awake be a negative thing? You know what I'm saying? I don't see the logic in it. You know what I mean? But people understand what it means when the right says woke, and it's not, they don't mean being aware. That's not what the meaning has gone into something else. This neoliberal, this cancel culture, this I don't know, LGBTQ pronouns and so forth and so on. When they say woke, that's what they mean. We was talking about what do they call it when they let people get on a job just because of their skin tone or their gender. I can't think of the phrase right now, but that's what they mean when they're talking about woke. So, but what, Doc, what do you think? Like the definition of woke, where it has come to now and where it started, like, where's the confusion? Like, what do you think?
Well, originally woke would be kind of like the new term of hip or cool. I'm down with it. I get it. I understand. I'm with you, man. But, and it was really okay. Woke was fine up until, I would say, right around the 45 era, end of 44 era, because it went from being cool, understanding, and things like that, to being a group of people that want no argument with what they say is cool. They want no discussion. This is the way you need to think. This is the way you need to talk. And if you don't, then you're a bad person. Somewhere, and see, that's where the left and right started tweaking different too. That's why everyone, the left, it's supposed to be good. It's like, yeah, it's one thing, but when you use your wokeness, whatever you're awoke about, and say that yours thoughts are the only thoughts allowed, and if you don't think this way, you've been brainwashed. That's what that's where the right gets into the why it's bad, because it's become a mantra that has little meaning other than if you don't see it this way, then you don't get it. Oh, well, woke. What's wrong with being woke? Because it's groupthink. Because if you don't agree with it, then you are bad. Then you are not part of it. Then you haven't been awoken.
Mm.
It is another mental construct used to keep us separated.
Yes. That last phrase, that last line you just said is perfect. Let me read this. It says, this is a comment underneath the video. It says, woke was originally used to define the idea that someone was conscious of issues that face those that often are forgotten by the mainstream. Police brutality, systemic racism, and sexism. Then it came to define the excess of oppression industrial complex. Universities telling Latinos they need to be called Latinx and wanting to dictate the speech and thoughts of others. Conflating speech with violence and privileged college kids crying because they heard an idea they didn't agree with. Now it's used to define any slightly liberal idea. Not easy to define when it keeps morphing depending on who is using the word.
That's it. That's actually really grouped well with what I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody's got a different view. To me, if I'm going to call someone woke, I am using it as a subtle insult.
Damn it.
Not because I think that, not because I'm not aware and things like that and stuff like that, but because it normally comes from a situation of you are disagreeing with me or we're disagreeing. And because of this, you have labeled me as a bad man. By labeling me as a bad man, you are not only allowed to speak with me in a nastier manner, but you're allowed to say rude things. And it doesn't matter because I'm a bad person because I don't believe the way you do.
Yeah. Well, I don't use it. I don't use that. I didn't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it.
Well, you got to remember too, we live in a day where literally definitions get changed in the dictionary, like on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
If you had watched through the pandemic, there were a lot of liberal definitions that changed literally morphed over the course of a year to where they're barely the same word they used to be. Not to mention the fact that the idiots at Oxford finally recognized irregardless as a word, and that makes me want to vomit.
Yeah,
anyway,
that should not be. That should not be a word.
Oh, it is officially now.
Sense.
But see, I kind of like the day back when my parents bought me a dictionary when I was 9, and it was one of those thick as a family Bible, like the big Bibles that are on that are at church and stuff like that. I mean, it was as big as my torso and thicker at the time. And I read that sucker in 4 months.
Yeah, my dad bought me an encyclopedia, like the whole volume encyclopedia, A to Z, Britannica, whatever it was. And it was really beautiful books.
I got my hands on Britannica 72 and World Book 86, the entire sets, and read both of them at the time.
Yeah, I've read that stuff all the way through. It's so crazy.
Actually, Britannica 72.
It's like Aardvark.
I mean,
was one of the first ones. I remember that shit. I really read that shit. Like, it's crazy.
Aaron Aarons, I believe, was the first or something like that. I can't even remember who he was anymore.
Yeah, man.
But
these kids don't know nothing about doing nothing like that, man.
If you took an experiment sometimes, read some of these words people are using today, Get a dictionary from hell, 1980. You know, that's not that far. That's 40 years. That's well within a lifetime. And then start comparing the words in the dictionary then to what's online today. And remember the fact that they don't change the same way they do anymore. You know when new words come out and get changed because you're looking forward to the new edition of the dictionary, as sad as that is. But now they change them at will. So you literally could be using a word one day, 3 months later, its definition has been altered.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later, it's different from what it was again.
And that's the reason why Wikipedia is not considered a good source.
Anything that can be publicly edited without any kind of checks other than you have to do the few exercises first is not a reliable source.
Yeah, so
it's a good source to start and use for a discussion.
And I still read Wikipedia, but like at school, at my school, you can't use Wikipedia as a source.
You know, you can if you're talking about like Roman gods or, you know, basic encyclopedia knowledge. But when you start getting to geopolitics and stuff like that, information about anyone that's been alive in the last 60, 80 years, no, you can't trust it. It's going to be written and modified by people that have their own views and stuff. You got to realize how much stuff was taken out of a whole lot of conservative politicians' Wikipedia pages during the pandemic because it was considered offensive.
And that's what's killing our education. It's people getting offended, and I don't know, it's a bunch of damn snowflakes. And these snowflakes is on the right and the left. Speaking of not knowing stuff, have you heard HISD is being taken over?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Remember, we were talking about that too on that last show before the break, or the show before the break. We were talking about that's what's going to happen if they don't get their shit together. And sure enough, 3 weeks later, they did it.
It has happened. Let me play this.
TE doing for years now. John joins us now. Show us what's going to happen next.
And Gina, every HISD parent needs to listen up tonight because this would be a major change in your child's education, but we didn't get here overnight. I want to take you back to 2016. The TEA appointed a conservator due to, quote, repeated unacceptable academic accountability ratings at Wheatley High School. Then in 2019, while the school board at the time was trying to prevent the state takeover, well, they were also fighting amongst themselves. So that's when the Texas Education Commissioner sent a letter to Grenita Lathan, the superintendent at the time, announcing a TEA takeover because of a, quote, failure of governance and, quote, the repeated low academic performance at Wheatley High School. Now, HISD ended up suing the state and was granted a temporary injunction. Now, fast forward to this past January, the Texas Supreme Court eventually ruling and sided with the TEA. Meanwhile, HISD says they ramped academic assistance teams and other programs to try to improve the low-performing schools. When new school superintendent Miller House II came in 2021, in a one-on-one interview, I asked him about the TEA takeover looming, and he was frank to me about the work that needed to be done then, but said he had already started working with the TEA on fixing what he called, quote, historical issues within HISD. And we saw progress in 2021-2022 school year. Wheatley improved its rating from unacceptable to a C. Then today, that bombshell announcement, the mayor flat out saying that he was told the TEA is taking over next week, and he is not happy about it.
And then I checked and discovered that there is not a success story anywhere in the country where the state has stepped in and taking over an entire school district, certainly on the size and magnitude of the Houston Independent School District.
So parents, I know your main question here tonight is, if this happens, what does ISD and its 207 schools look like under a TEA? Court all be placed, a board of outside managers brought in to explain the 2021-22 which talk about the difference.
Yeah, man. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I ain't gonna lie. I know it's scary as hell. I got kids that are in HISD right now.
The whole idea is, how much worse can it be? I mean, you were the one actually supporting the idea of government taking over schools. Let's see how that works.
Well, I guess we're gonna find out.
Hey, HISD, especially certain of the more inner city schools and stuff like that, has been crap. It really has. And a lot of it has to do with the neighborhoods, the kind of kids, rebellious, angry, not going to fit in the system anyway because they've told they've never going to go into. I mean, the kids are defeated before they ever set foot in the school door, you know?
Yeah.
And it just gets worse because that's what their people tell them. The people in their lives, the people they knew, the people that they watch as they grow up going to jail, and the things that they see as being normal part of every day. I mean, and that is not the kind of people that do well in a sit down, shut up, read your book, get better kind of environment.
Well,
they don't get engaged like that. They get engaged by interaction.
Like I say, I don't know how to feel about it because the idea of like firing the superintendent actually sounds kind of good to me. But then on the other hand, it's like these officials were elected. So then it's like not the people, their choice is being taken away as far as that's concerned, because it's going to be like private people who are going to be chosen to work these, positions or whatever.
And get paid.
And get paid. So that's what's scary about that for me. But again, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it really.
Like you said, we're about to see what it's like when a state takes over a school system.
Yeah, I know it's scary.
One of two things. Ideally, they restructure the district, try to make sure everything's okay, and in a year or two, turn around and do open elections for all board members again. Ideally. However, if in the next couple of years they turn the crap around and start doing really, really well, they could introduce something for the people to vote to allow them to continue running it.
The education system is so broken, and them using those tests as parameters to decide on how well the schools are doing, and then they teach into the test and they're stressing these kids out, and I don't see that improving.
Making the test that important that all they do is, well, see, here's the problem with that. Money. Teaching to the test isn't about the students at all. Teaching to the test is about getting money for the school district.
Yeah.
Money has become more important than the education of the kids.
Right.
Question is, you don't like the tests, but how do you assess minimum knowledge to make sure that they're ready to advance?
Yeah. I mean, you just got to find a better way. These standardized tests are not the
Well,
way.
Well, standardized tests are good for easy stuff, short stuff. But I personally think there should be more essay tests, but there are people that'll do even worse at that. I mean, crap, how many people in high school can barely talk, much less write English?
Yeah, I think it should be more regional.
And I'm talking about people born in America.
And Texas is a huge ass state. So you have the same test that all these kids are taking across the whole state. And the backgrounds and languages and cultures of these kids are all so varied.
But see, now you're making an outside excuse, though. If everything and every bit of knowledge required to take these tests has been introduced in the classroom and taught in the classroom, which by your very argument, that's all they do is teach the test, then yeah, they should have the knowledge. All of that should, nothing else should, none of that culture excuses and all that should make a difference.
I'm saying even if
got the information,
even if they pass the test, did they learn stuff? That's what I'm saying. Did they actually retain any knowledge?
Learning is not necessary. Only regurgitation is necessary.
Exactly.
That goes also for the first 2 years of college.
It's the education system.
It's just a completely new bunch of stuff they need you to regurgitate that contradicts 80% of what you spent the last 12 years learning.
Oh,
you gotta unlearn 60 to 70% of your knowledge, relearn another 30%. So you're still at about 60%. And so the other 40% literally is going to be what they tell you they want to see.
And then
which is why all the college kids start to think alike. That's why academics quite often are really fantastic when it comes to figuring things out that don't involve people. Because most of them have learned from professors who have withdrawn from people because they are so academic that they can't get by in the world because they can't understand how to include people into their knowledge base.
Man, that is so true.
People are fucking crazy.
And it messes up their analysis. It messes up their their results. They can't. It's hard to teach something without it being like rigid. And our system is just, I don't know, man.
But see, when you're giving fundamental knowledge, here's the problem that I had growing up. They're giving me fundamental knowledge. My brain is working 2 or 3 grades above that knowledge as soon as I hear it. No, stop thinking, learn. Stop thinking, learn. What they were trying to teach me to do was add and subtract before multiply and divide.
Yeah.
Multiply and divide before fractions. But my brain was going from addition and subtraction to fractions already.
Yeah.
I got that kicked out of my skull.
Yeah.
And I think it was a bad thing. I think I should have been encouraged to continue to follow that direction
instead of going pushing you backwards, basically. And I hate how they make you memorize like the names of people and the dates of things. And
okay, that is useful for flashpoint memory.
But you don't.
That teaches you how. It's not just that though, but it teaches you how to memorize and how to figure things like that out in the future. Completely remove that from the history, which I know you're taking that from that video, which I can shred that video a little bit, or at least some of the basic ideas. Not that they're not valid; they are absolutely. But anyway, like I say, they're trying to keep you in a linear process for adding information, for stacking information. And the problem is I'm thinking 2 levels ahead. They can't stop to encourage me without stopping from them. They can't acknowledge me without confusing the people that they're trying to pull up to the minimum level of knowledge.
And that still comes like that
So
sounds
you
like the
got
standardized test.
like no.
That sounds like an argument against the standardized test, because not
No,
all the
I'm
kids
trying
are on
to
the same level.
explain to you the situation of it. You're
Yeah.
saying that's against it, and I'm saying there is a baseline of knowledge. Mine jumps ahead. They can't. That's a problem in a classroom when you have as many people as you do. But if you start doing that, then you end up with a class of dumb people, which are then violated on a personal and emotional level for the rest of their life.
Yeah. I just don't see much value in memorizing a date or a name.
But see, throw that out the window. See, you're doing that based on the history, based on the video we were talking about. I'm telling you what you're memorizing is not important. It's the process of learning how to memorize. That's what you're being taught in school. Because that's what you carry with you to the next level of education, when the things they get you to start memorizing are important. They're key points. And it's like, okay, this, you know, they're trying to draw lines. Now you know the lines from before, and now the knowledge you get starts connecting it and building from those points to increase. And then if you want to go further into history, you know, instead of I took 4 years or four history classes for mine. I took both American histories, and I took world civilization, which really is Western civilization 1 and 2 as well, for mine. And there was a whole lot of, a matter of fact, our final test was name 5 good things and 5 bad things that you learned about history in this class. That was one of my favorite tests. I mean,
I love it when I have opportunities to shred the information, or, you know, I love that.
It wasn't about shredding the information. It was about showing that, 1, you learn things. 2, you've learned to compare and contrast history in ways that you see where the beneficial things are and the negative things are from the same incidents. And that's what half of my paper I did, like 2 good things, 2 bad things, or 3 good things, 3 bad things. And then the last 2 were both good and bad. And I discussed why they were both good and bad. And man, I nailed those courses. That is exactly what the teacher was looking for, was someone with the ability to see both sides of, and that's what they're supposed to be teaching you in college, is the ability to look at both sides of a picture. Unfortunately, most of college now is only about, well, what's considered the right side, the woke side, the liberal side of things. You know, that is the primary focus of most classes nowadays.
Let me read some comments underneath the video. This first one, it says, they need to focus on the head of the boil causing students not to excel. They essential needs of the students is, wow, this dude's writing is terrible. The essential needs of the students.
He went to public schools.
In many of these struggling schools are not being met. Why aren't community leaders and politicians stepping in to address issues like environmental safety and health issues in these communities? I think he's making a good point. He's just not articulating it well. Let me read some more. It says,
maybe he went to HISD.
Yeah. Let me read another one. It says, thank God I went to one of the schools in HISD and teachers didn't help no one unless you were in basketball or football. Another comment, it says, nice. It's about time. Now let's educate those kids the right way.
Say Neil up there talking about the teachers don't help unless you're in basketball or football. Welcome to Texas.
I'm telling you, man. I know all about that.
Basketball, football, any sports that you get into that can potentially get you a college scholarship or get the school noticed by college scouts, and you will get a ride. Heck, when I was in high school, it turned out that there were several of us that were extremely talented at volleyball, and the vice or the assistant principal was actually a collegiate volleyball player. Tried to get a volleyball team started at the competitive level for the school because he said, dude, I guarantee the three of you guys will get scouted. He was told that we don't have the time or the money in the school's budget to pursue a competitive girls' sport for boys. But if you can get those same recruits to come for our baseball or football team, we might see what we can do.
I saw a post where this lady was saying that, you know, why do we give kids 3-4 hours of homework after they were just in school for like 8 hours? Like, we're stressing these kids out, you know, and they're not learning. Like you said, they're just memorizing and regurgitating.
Yeah, it's the amount of data that we have to crush into them for the test.
And that's why I don't like the standard test. Just ask them, like you said with that class, what did you learn? You know, what did you learn? How come the test can't be something like that, you know? But see, they have these bots to grade this stuff instead of having real people, you know. It's a lazy way.
Stuff. If you don't understand and you don't know, you can't get to the next level of education. And I'm not saying this is a defense. I'm saying that this is a problem that education has had from the beginning.
Well,
and I'll tell you, from the time that they started splitting classes up by schools, stop, boy. That's when a lot of it started going. Now, safety-wise, yeah, it's understandable to have 1st through 5th, 6th through 8th, 9th through 12th together. But when they started doing that, they also split up one teacher following this one group of kids all the way through, you know, from 5th or 6th grade to graduation, that had the ability to pull the ones up that they knew needed help, that could, you know, give the other ones assignments that would challenge them without having to stand over them, because they understood them, because they had the time and ability. But everyone still was able to progress. Like if you were in, okay, the big problem I had moving across country, every 6 months, I'd have a new school. When I went from Oklahoma to California, it was like they were a year ahead of where I was, and I was well within my comfortable range. Then we went to Florida, which was like 2 years behind. I mean, I was in Florida in 5th grade, and I was learning stuff that we had been covered in 3rd and 4th in California. And that's a thing too. Different states have different levels. So you've got the state test, which requires this thing, and then you've got the federal test, that's what you notice there's 2 big tests every year, or one's now every 3 or 4 years, and one's every year. The one every year is about, I think, state funding, and the one every 3 or 4 years is about federal funding.
So it's all about money, and they don't give a damn about the students. They're making money, and like I say, these damn tests, it's easy to just run it through this machine, and the machine tells you, you know, what the grade was, instead of having teachers actually analyzing these students and really, you know, determining whether these kids gain knowledge or whatever. You know, it's just freaking money, making money, sending these damn, turning each one of these kids into a freaking check.
I had one teacher really, really good. They ran the standardized test for you like they had to, because that was their job. But if you did badly on them, or you missed some fundamental problems, they would either go back over it all in class without pointing out anyone specific, or they would talk to you in a one-on-one to find out why you didn't do well on the test. And this guy was an education guy that was writing a book and stuff like that. And so what he would do, he would find out why you weren't doing well with the test, and then he would find a different way to try to present the knowledge to you until he found one that worked better. And he actually a couple of times had some kids come up and do like raps based on Shakespeare. Or what was one? One of the guys, he couldn't understand the story of Beowulf.
Yeah.
So one of the guys that likes to play around and rap, he's like, "Oh man, that's a story like this," and so he says, "Here's an assignment. I'll give you 2 points of extra credit on your final grade if you write and perform a Beowulf rap." So he did. And the next time the Beowulf test came up, the entire class passed.
That's how you do it. Let's I ain't gonna be able to stay on here much longer. I ain't gonna lie, I'm tired and my brain is not working right. But I want to do the Taiwan thing. Before I cover the Taiwan thing, let's do this overall news right here from Democracy Now! And just stop me when you want to make comments.
Well, to Democracy Now! The Warren T-shirt. Law banks have moved to prop up the ailing San Francisco Bay after the sudden signature and last week sparked fears of a financial meltdown. Bank of America, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo will each make $5 and other Wall Street firms further 10. The Fed have received about $300 billion in emergency lending over the past week. Roughly on Capitol Hill, Treasury sought to assure the Senate over the bill.
I can banking to stand that Americans are confident that their deposits will be them.
Why did her words make me more afraid? Why am I more scared now that she said that? You know? And what I do like about this is that like the money is coming from the other banks instead of just taxpayers' money, you know. If the other big banks are dumping money into the bank to keep it going, okay, whatever, you know. But if when it's just taxpayer money going into the banks, I don't like that at all. But Janet Yellen's words did not make me feel confident that our banking system is sound. Not at all. It had the opposite effect.
Defended the Biden administration's decision to allow all depositors at SVB and Signature to recover their assets after the banks collapsed using money from the Federal Deposit Corporation. That's despite the fact that over 93% in Signature were not injured by the FDIC. Under questioning from admitted, smaller banks that might not have treatment. The United Nations says there's encouraging momentum in the effort to end the war in Yemen after 8 years of conflicts, and Saudi officials said Iran has agreed to stop arms. These as part of the recent deal to restore diplomatic ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Here in the United States, Senators Chris Murphy and Mike introduced a partisan resolution this week would require on Saudi rights abuses with the goal of end sales to the kingdom. The humanitarian catastrophe in Yemen left over 17 million people in need of assistance. The Polish president, Andrzej Duda, said Thursday his government will ship 4 Soviet-era MiG fighter jets to Ukraine, becoming the first nation since Russia's invasion to meet Ukraine's request to deliver warplanes. Following that announcement, Slovakia's government said it would transfer 13 MiG fighters to Ukraine. Finland, the Netherlands, and other NATO members are considering similar transfers. In Geneva, the UN-mandated Independent International Commission of Inquiry on Ukraine said Thursday Russia's committed wide-ranging war crimes in Ukraine, including possible crimes against humanity. Eric Moos, the chair of the commission.
The Commission has concluded that the Russian authorities have committed numerous violations of international humanitarian law and international human rights law, in addition to a wide range of war crimes, including the war crime of excessive incidental death, injury or damage, willful killings, torture, inhuman treatment, unlawful confinement, rape, as well as unlawful transfer and deportation.
China's foreign minister said Thursday he called his Russian counterpart to urge a diplomatic solution to the Ukraine war, warning conflict could spiral out of control. The warning came as China announced President Xi Jinping will travel to Moscow early next week to hold talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Australia's agreed to purchase 220 Tomahawk cruise missiles from the United States at a cost of nearly $1 billion. The U.S. State Department approved the sale Thursday, just days after President Biden formally announced plans to sell nuclear-powered submarines to Australia in a bid to counter China's influence in the Indo-Pacific.
What the hell does Australia need nuclear-powered submarines for?
The Biden administration is threatening to ban TikTok if its Chinese owners refuse to sell their stake in the U.S. version of the hugely popular video sharing app. TikTok has been the target of increasing scrutiny by some lawmakers who say it's a threat to national security and that its owner, Beijing-based ByteDance, could use Americans' personal data. On Thursday, the UK became the latest country to announce TikTok would be banned on government devices following similar bans by the US, Canada, and the European Union.
Yeah, okay, so this topic right here, and I don't like TikTok. I think it's horrible. But I'm starting to think now that it's not about the how damaging TikTok is to our kids, like they really care about that. It's more about the competition between tech companies in the States and tech companies in China. So now, the more I think about it now, I'm thinking that that's the real reason. Like, but they're saying it's like it's a threat to national security.
We've actually already talked about this on the show before. I was telling you to look into the user agreement, see what information and everything it opens up and it allows you to use in your phone and everything and your computer. I mean, take a look at what's in there and what's allowed. That's a lot of information, a lot of stuff on there. The original version of it before they had the first time had stuff that normally American companies aren't allowed to have automatically. You actually have to give them the data instead of them being able to pull it. Plus the location thing, you know, they want it off of military phones and government stuff because it can be used to location track military personnel.
Yeah.
Congress people, stuff like that. And that is reasonable.
I think that all of the apps can do that stuff. I think that they're using that as now. I feel like
you don't know though. You're sitting there saying, "Oh, I think they can all do," but I told you, read the differences in the user agreements. It's all in there. I brought it up before. I mentioned why. I mentioned the things that they couldn't do and didn't do. It's in the user agreements. There's a reason why they're specifically. It's one of the same reasons that the really good, cheap phones didn't come here. I can't remember what it is, but there was a phone, but something to do with the integration with our system left too much of the user data going directly to China and Chinese probably much rather than coming through them, but that's beside the point. It's in the user agreement why. And it's just like a lot of people don't know that Facebook has the right to use anything you post on there. They can publish it for themselves, sell it, and not pay you anything.
Well, they're already doing that. That's the same thing YouTube does. That's their whole business model. But what I'm saying is that I'm calling BS on this. I think that it's like a Cold War. It's a tech war. And they're using that as an excuse, you know. They don't want they don't want competition.
Seriously, what you're doing now is you're soapboxing. You need to look into these user agreements. There is a reason.
Well, let me play this right here. It's this guy. He's making a comment. It says China does not threaten the U.S. Nobody can threaten the U.S. China has committed, in the eyes of the U.S., the great sin to develop an economy as big as the U.S.
All this stuff about the need of nuclear is the idea that China is threat or will threaten. Now, this is understood, and it's true. China does not threaten the United States. Nobody can threaten the United States. It's got kilometers of sea between the Chinese coast and California. It's got the Atlantic Ocean on the other side. It has a massive country in space, in land mass, and friends in Canada on the north, Mexico on the south, and armaments in all history. China has committed, in the eyes of the United States, the great sin of internationalism. And what is that sin? To develop an economy as big as the United States. That's the sin. They've got as big as the US. The Americans will never condone or accept a state as large as them, you know, and that's what China presents. China's mere presence. I mean, they would have preferred they remain in poverty, 20% of humanity forever. But the fact that China is now, you know, an industrial economy larger than the United States, larger, according to IMF, 20% larger. They say, hang on, this is not in the playbook. This is not in the playbook. You know, what an affront. This is about the maintenance of US strategic hegemony in Asia. Now, this is a country which has no land in the metropolitan zone of Asia. There's no US in Asia. It's 10,000 kilometres across the Pacific to the coast of California. So they are not a metropolitan Asian power, but they claim to be and wish to be the primary strategic power in Asia. So what are the Chinese supposed to say to that? Oh, that's okay. We've been here 4,000 years. We've developed, you know, we've been every bugger known to man. We've developed a decent economy, a decent standard of living, you know, a shelter, accommodation, education, you know. That's our sin, is it? That's our sin. And we've got to be superintended by your Navy, you know, by the US Navy. Could you just imagine if the Chinese Blue Water Navy decided to do their sightseeing 6 miles off the coast of California? Could you imagine the brouhaha that would go on?
Yeah. So I think that's what it's about. The tech wars. Let's go back to Democracy Now.
In the occupation, a teenager in the city of Jenin on Thursday. The deaths bring the number of Palestinians killed by Israeli forces this year alone to 30 in Israel. Scheduled will include officials. Fresh protests erupted across Thursday after Macron bypassed Parliament and invoked executive powers to push through a high contest while raising the return to 6. Macron took the drastic step. It appeared he might not have the necessary support in the National Assembly. Lawmakers booed and sang the national anthem while holding up protest signs and signaled Macron could soon face a no-confidence vote by opposition parties. Protests and prolonged strikes have rocked France over the past 2 months as union leaders vowed to keep up the disruptions. TV from Thursday's protests in Paris.
It's proof that the president's party is a minority in parliament, but he is also a minority in public opinion. The responsibility of President Macron. After he refused to have dialogue with us, he decided to pass this law by force. This law, which is unfair and unpopular, will result in people work more to get less.
In the United
So this is something that's barely getting covered in the media. And they've been protesting for a while and they're getting bigger. They had a whole nationwide strike and the workers not working as a result of this, even though they're pushing this through and it looks like it's going to become law. You know, they raised the age of retirement and it changed the structure of how many hours you have to work so that you can get, your retirement funds or whatever. And it's crazy because here in the States, they raised it here too. And it wasn't a blip. The people didn't even freaking notice or didn't pay attention or didn't care enough to be angry about it. And the age is way lower, not way lower, but a number of years lower there in France.
Kingdom, unions representing medical workers, including nurses and paramedics, have agreed to a tentative deal on pay raises that would recover ground lost to inflation. Union leaders hailed the deal as a historic victory, capping months of rolling strikes by thousands of workers at the National Health Service. About 100,000 civil servants and others, including junior doctors at NHS, remain in a long-running dispute over pay, pension, and job security. Meanwhile, the UK government says it's agreed to intensive talks on teacher pay and classroom sizes, with an estimated 200,000 teachers in England and Wales who hit picket lines this week for a 3-day strike action. Teachers were among tens of thousands of people who marched to the streets of London Wednesday.
I can't sit back and watch education decimated. It's not just about teacher pay, we're talking about funding for schools. Our children deserve so much better than this. They are our future.
In Greece, riot police deployed tear gas and sound grenades against protesters Thursday as workers' general strike last month killed people. The strike grounded flights, halted public transport, kept ferries, canceled classes, and left public hospitals running with emergency staff. Rail workers say government neglect and privatization led to the decay of the train system.
Let me play that last little clip back because this is exactly what's happening here in the States, but people aren't reacting the same way that they have reacted there.
Staff. Rail workers say government neglect and privatization led to the decay of the train system.
Government neglect and privatization led to the decay of the rail system. That's exactly what's happening here. And then people were trying to come up with all these conspiracy theories and pointing fingers at which president and all of this instead of looking at the reality of what happened, and then there was the strike that got stopped by Biden. Anyways, this is exactly what's happening here.
States in Ohio on the site of February's Norfolk Southern train derailment, levels of dioxin hundreds of times higher than what's considered safe. That's according to The Guardian, which had the data reviewed by former EPA officials and other chemical experts who said dioxins found in were extremely concerning, even if they're below the federal cleanup threshold. The findings also contradicted assertions by the EPA, which told Congress last week dioxin levels were very low. In 2010, when the EPA found dioxin poses cancer risks, the agency tried to have those limits lowered, but the Obama administration kept the higher threshold in place. In related news, 2 trains operated by BNSF derailed in Arizona and Washington state Thursday. In Washington, cleanup teams were deployed after some 5,000 gallons of fuel leaked into the Snohomish Tribal Reservation. North Dakota Supreme Court ruled Thursday the state's abortion ban should remain on hold while a lawsuit over its constitutionality is resolved. North Dakota's anti-abortion trigger law was supposed to take effect once Roe v. Wade was overturned. A lower court early booked it last summer, arguing abortion rights protected by the state constitution. The legislation makes it a felony to perform an abortion with limited exceptions in cases of emergency. And the Los Angeles Times announced Thursday it will no longer use the word internment to describe the mass imprisonment of over 100,000 people of Japanese ancestry during World War II. It will instead use terms like incarceration, imprisonment, or detention. It's the latest step taken by the paper to rectify the harm it caused during the war when it called for the incarceration of Japanese and Japanese Americans. The LA Times issued a formal editorial apology 6 years ago. And those are some of the headlines.
That's how they teach that too, internment camps. That's how I was taught. It was internment camps. That was the phrase that they used. I don't think that changing the phrase really helps or makes any difference, really. Maybe, at least they're admitting they were wrong about something, but still, I don't know how much that really impacts. I have apologies. I'm pressing too much buttons. Can y'all hear me? I have one more topic I want to cover before we get out of here because I'm tired as hell. It's the one about Taiwan, the gray zone. Did y'all see the video? I shared it in the group. The gray zone. It says, is the U.S. planning for the destruction of Taiwan? So it was a tweet. It began as a tweet, a tongue-in-cheek tweet, but then it went viral and government officials started reacting to it. So it must have struck a nerve. It was too close to truth, obviously. And the guy just kind of pulled it out of his ass. So this is and then this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the tech war with China. And Taiwan is is where the chips are coming from. So that's our reason for having any concern with Taiwan. It's because of the chips. Let me play some.
Where there was an interesting and kind of darkly incident that occurred recently on the pilots thinking on Taiwan and started in tweeting satirical tweets that highlight the Biden administration policy. As a result of Garland tweet, I guess we'll start with his tweet. Garland tweeted on February 15th, breaking news, White House insiders leaked that when asked if there could be any greater after the Ukraine project, President Biden responded, "Wait until you see our plan for the destruction of Taiwan." Okay, well, that wasn't exactly true. Garland's being tongue-in-cheek, but in a way, it is true. It rests on a foundation of truth. It's funny because it's true. So some people did not correctly interpret Garland's humor, and that would be leading opposition figures from the Kuomintang or KMT party in Taiwan, who are actually starting to step up and take on the DPP, the Democratic People's Party, that's completely on board for U.S. escalation against China. And one of their leading lawmakers, Alex Tsai, translated a tweet into Chinese and posted on Facebook that a notable journalist in the U.S. has said that there is a White House plan for the destruction of Taiwan. Everyone went bonkers over this in Taiwan. The Chinese foreign
There's no
ministry
White House
issued a
plan for
statement and a
destruction of
challenge to the
everything.
State Department to clarify it. Once again, it's not.
So if you just made a tweet of a specific thing of a White House plan of destruction of random item, you'd probably be on point. Is that what you're saying?
They did war games about 3-4 years ago. They did zombie Holocaust war games. They operated as a military unit under the guise of a zombie Holocaust just happened. We are going to deploy in this area as if that happened, and this is how we'll act. As a war game, as a training scenario.
Well, I don't have a problem with that. I understand why they do these.
They've got war games for the invasion and an invasion from Mexico. Because there's only two ways they can come in. I mean, because Middle America is not going to fall without some serious problems. Because you either going to have to come down through Canada, or you're going to have to go up through Mexico, because the Appalachians and the Rocky Mountains make some seriously hellacious barriers to get around.
Yeah. So
Not to
I don't
mention
have
the people that live up there in those areas ain't going to play with no non-American forces trying to come through.
I agree with you. And I don't have a problem with the war games necessarily, because they get a lot of information out of that stuff. Like one of them they did where to make it simulate a war with China, and it showed how that they would run out of, what was it? They was going to run out of missiles or whatever. Like, so, I don't have a problem with the war games per se. But related to this is, White House planning for the destruction of said thing, and then you have all of these government officials or institutions reacting to it, is what is kind of revealing, I think.
He said that shit that you're not supposed to say. It's kind of like Batman's got a plan for taking down all the Justice League members, but nobody's supposed to know about that.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're not going to tell me every single friggin' country that is a major or minor power in the world does not have some sort of oh shit scenario built already.
Yeah.
And if they don't, well, that just shows why their leadership is not that good.
Let me play some more of this.
So the Taiwanese government has introduced a criminalized rumors or disinformation, a real treat to democracy that we're looking for.
During wartime, that's interesting.
Just because of Garland's tweet. There's no need to show that. But what's interesting, and Garland pointed this out, is that there is a plan for the destruction of Taiwan. It's out there in the open. All you have to do is look for it. Center for International Policy, which conducted a war game earlier this year in January on a potential conflict between the United States and Chinese militaries over Taiwan. And it basically started with a Chinese amphibious invasion of Taiwan that the U.S. seeks to repel. This was funded by the Smith Richardson Foundation, by the way, which sponsors so many militaristic think tanks and neoconservative endeavors in Washington. So it's not exactly, their findings are not exactly going to be slanted against the U.S. military. What did they find in the simulation? The U.S. and its allies lost dozens of ships, maybe an entire carrier fleet, hundreds of aircraft, and tens of thousands of service members. Think about that. When was the last time the U.S. lost tens of thousands of service members and Taiwan saw its economy devastated? You figure if its economy was devastated, its society was devastated as well. This article that I highlighted from Air and Space Forces actually called in an expert who said that any conflict between the U.S. and China would lead to a massive change in the way that Americans live and see their country because of the existential crisis that it would produce. And then you have the U.S. Army War College, which produced a paper in late 2022. This was kind of buried in the paper, but some close readers found this, and it said they were advising the Taiwanese government to commit economic suicide in order to repel a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, that if news of an invasion arrived, Taiwan would destroy its main superconductor factory and thereby destroy the most important chip maker in the world and China's most important supplier, to make an occupation of Taiwan untenable and unappealing. But that would be the end of Taiwan's economic claim to fame, which is being the world capital of superconductor production. So that's what the U.S. military and its finest minds have in store for Taiwan. And yet, the Democratic People's Party of Taiwan has openly welcomed. They tweeted today that they openly welcome a $619 million weapons sale from the Biden administration to Taiwan. So they're openly welcoming this. And so Garland was right in a way. And the war of words over his tweet, although it was a satirical tweet, cannot be dismissed as a war over disinformation or a misunderstanding. It's where we're heading right now as the U.S. and its military speak much more openly than they ever have before about a war with China, as Keith said.
Yeah. Meet the Press featured the Center for New American Security's war game last year. I put the clip there if you want to play it. And there's another clip we can play too of Nicholas Burns, the U.S. ambassador to China, this week admitting what all this is about. He says that we're the leader in the Asia Pacific region and China needs to recognize that. That's what all this is about, pretty much.
Let's take a listen to Nicholas Burns.
Our American position is stronger than it was 5 or 10 years ago. It's the strength of our alliances. It's the strength of our private sector. It's our innovative capacity and our R&D capacity, which comes from our research institutions and our big tech companies. And I do think that the Chinese now understand that the United States staying in this region, we're the leader in this region in many ways, and that we want a future of peace with China. We don't want, as President Biden makes clear every time he talks about this, we don't want conflict, but we're going to hold our own out here. And I feel optimistic. I'm just concluding my first year as ambassador about the American position in the country and in this region.
What do you say?
I say, there's that, we want to maintain the whole time he was talking, I was waiting for the word or to come out, but he finally says it. We want to maintain peace, but
yeah.
And then he went on. You did catch that veiled threat there. That's why freaking people are getting pissed off at America right now.
Yeah.
Because of that way of speaking.
Right. And because then he said, we are the leader.
We're here whether you like it or not.
Right.
We're not going to go away.
And we are the leader.
We're going to be here peacefully, but
and we are running this region.
Flashback to Putin and hey guys, I don't want to pull the trigger, but
And,
you know,
and
that is
and
a
it's
veiled threat.
and it's
Whether
way
it
over
comes from
there.
us, the good guys, or the bad guys, it's a veiled threat.
And we're like, yeah, we're the leader over here in this region. It's like, so the Americans is like they have this attitude of we're the leader everywhere. We're the leader of the
Well,
world.
I'm not going to start the fight, but I will end it if I have to. Fuck
Yeah,
you.
like
You're still a
it's like
fucking bully.
I'm the leader. So like, if you either accept that or else.
No, I will give him a credit for saying a leader and not the leader. I will give him the credit for saying that.
Yeah, that's what they said too a little bit. Let me play some.
So
I love it. So he says, we're the leader in this region. And then there's a little bit of a pause. There's a little bit of a pause, a small. And then he says, he qualifies. He says, in many ways. And I don't think he initially meant to say we're the leader in this region in many ways. I think he meant to say the leader in this region. And then he realized to himself, oh, it doesn't sound so good if we're declaring that we're the leader in this region. So let me qualify that. Let me water that down a little bit and say in many ways to make it more palatable. But that is right there.
He did say
how
a
the US is
leader,
the world.
not the leader. I
This is
was
the U.S.
listening. I
ambassador to
listened for that
China declaring that his country is leader in China's region. It says it all.
We remember John Bolton, I mean, NSC director to Donald Trump, and war-crazed walrus said that the U.S.'s policy towards Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba was a Monroeist policy, drawing on the Monroe Doctrine, which declared that all of Latin America was the backyard of the U.S. and it would not allow foreign interference there. Well, as neo-colonial as Bolton's statement was, an outright imperialist, at least he was drawing on some kind of American tradition and document, whereas Nicholas Burns is just simply asserting total U.S. control of a region that is thousands of miles away, which shares absolutely no border with the United States. And it's consistent with the rhetoric we hear about China moving more aggressively into the South China Sea. It's like, we got to do something there.
Yeah.
So we are hurtling toward another conflict that would be existential for the United States, as the U.S. has failed to succeed in the Ukraine proxy war and it cannot even define victory. And you're starting to see that narrative trickle out in mainstream media that Ukraine and the U.S. and its U.S. backers need to define victory. What does it even mean? But at the same time, they're pushing for a conflict with pretty much all of Eurasia, at least the two most powerful, resource-rich countries, with the most of the population, and China with the largest industrial base on the planet. This is insane.
Dude, 1/3 of the
Insane.
entire population, 1/3 of the entire population of the world lives in an area smaller than the United States in that area of the world. You do good not to piss off the Mongol horde. You think they'd learn that after the fucking Romans. And I know saying that is really wrong, and I'm just comparing it to not trying to be a racist piece of crap.
Well, the basic truth of it is true, because
You don't piss off the Mongol horde. You don't do a land war in. You don't attack Russia or Moscow in the winter.
Yeah,
I mean,
these are
there are
all
some basic rules of warfare.
Yeah, because you're not going to be successful. You know. Let me read some comments underneath the video. This one, it says, of course they do. Basically, they want to use Taiwan against China the exact same way they have used Ukraine against Russia. Another comment says,
no. The thing about Taiwan is we get everything from Taiwan cheaper than China, or that used to be where we used to get it from until China. We don't want a war there. We don't want that invaded. We don't want those factories and those people and those $1.15 an hour workers to have a war in that area. That's going to increase the cost of goods so much But you want to bet if that happens, even if we support them, what do you want to bet? Alibaba and Temu and Wish are still going to be shipping to us and taking our money.
They'll find a way.
Hey, 80% of all funds that come from America and go into China end up going into the pocket of the CCP. 80% is, it works, and I mean, they're making, that's one of the reasons why we're not supposed to send money over there if we're not buying something. Well, wait, I'm thinking Venezuela. China's not that high, but a large portion, I think they're at about a 60 or 70% tax rate. Say your money comes from another country. They tax you higher on it than if you had made it within the country.
Let me read a few
I
more comments.
would like to get some verification of that. Hey, someone out there listening, do a comment. Let us know if that's really what's going on, if you can. Or hit that StreamYard link in my thing and come on and tell us I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Tell me. I want it.
Let me read some more comments. This one, it says, Lindsey Graham said, "We will fight to the last man in Taiwan, admitting it's totally our economic interests." Another comment, it says, "Absolutely, the U.S. has been planning it for a long time." Let me see.
Dude, we can't even recognize Taiwan as a country. I mean, a lot of actors are getting smashed right now because they're saying, "Hey, yeah, I went over to Taiwan. It was a great country. It was beautiful." And then the Chinese government comes to them and goes, "None of your movies or shows will ever be allowed to be shown in if you don't take that back and do not and you have to say they are not a country."
But we do recognize.
We don't. They are it is Taiwan, ROC, Republic of China. They are not their own country.
Well,
if you say they are, you get in trouble with the Chinese government.
Yeah, I know that's true. Let me read this comment. It says, "It's not only Taiwan that is going to go up in ashes if the U.S. government is going have its way in the Indo-Pacific. In the PH, the U.S. military presence has gone up dramatically. The U.S. military is using more and more land in the PH, and one thing you can be sure of, they are definitely not building Disneyland or theme parks on the real estate they are using here. Moreover, with the PH being part of the U.S. military's first island chain strategy to encircle China, I'm concerned about the kind of weapons they are going to be positioning here on PH soil against China. Furthermore, the U.S. government has a neither confirm nor deny policy of the presence of tactical nuclear weapons of any of its military bases on foreign soil. Last year, there was a report published from a U.S. government-funded think tank with the title Ground-Based Intermediate-Range Missiles in the Indo-Pacific, assessing the positions of U.S. allies in the region. To make a long story short, this gives the public a peek of what U.S. intentions are, and that is for an offensive missile system to be deployed in the Indo-Pacific. And it looks like this is a wet dream coming true for the Warhawks in Washington, but a nightmare on the horizon that Filipinos may have to face when their country will be at the receiving end of a Chinese attack in response to the presence of U.S. tactical nuclear weapons on PH soil aimed at China. It's insanity. I think what you were saying before about the fear. Well, let me read this comment, then I'm going to say what I was going to say. It says, "Every time I talk to another human being here in Australia, I realize how closet racist everyone is. It is if no one has actually ever talked about the state of things from another perspective to them before. That to have a different point of view is just insane, yet their perspective only leads to one thing, through fear to war. Thanks, Max and Aaron. What you were saying, Doc, and I've been thinking about it. It's like it's the fear of the war that is the power, right?
War is outright war is bad, but the fear of war makes people billions, makes people rich. I believe that's close to what I said.
Yeah.
I actually that one actually came off the top of my head and I didn't write it down anywhere. But I remember it too. That one resounded with me.
Yeah, that definitely resounded with me because I think it's true. And so it's the threat level red thing, you know, and you know,
No, threat level orange.
Yeah, so
not quite at the edge of war, not quite, you know, we're not sharpening the pitchforks, we're not loading the guns, but we're stocking up.
So when people
we're
are
building
so scared,
shelters, we're buying rations, we're getting ready because it could go bad.
Right. So then people are scared because it could go bad. And then that puts people in positions where they make bad decisions, or they can be controlled, or it allows them, like you say, to make money.
It makes people about to get locked down for 2 weeks take 114 rolls of toilet paper off the shelf
and take experimental shots and you know, practice social distancing.
Well, there's some people that need to be socially distanced for a while ago. But
Yeah.
social distancing, I get. But you know what? I don't care what store I was at. I would not stand on that red X.
I know I had a problem with that shit.
Now, I grew up watching Roadrunner and Coyote. I know better than to step on that red X.
I'm telling you, man. And it's just like a social experiment. It's a psyop, and it's just like, and then it's a experiment in totalitarianism. It's just like, stand right there. Don't move off from that spot right there. Stand right there.
Well, you know, there's a lot of countries that don't have lines like we do. America, Britain, stuff like that. You literally just kind of mill around until whatever opens, and then everybody just kind of bum rushes the door.
Hmm.
I mean, I might be wrong, but I want to think a friend of mine went to like Poland or Lithuania or something like that, and said he was just hanging out. He was like happy. He was right near the door, and no one else seemed to be in line or everything. When the door opened up, it's like, man, it was like Black Friday. He said he got elbowed back to the back by these little old ladies.
Well, the first thing they teach us in elementary school is how to stand in the line here in the States.
How to conform. How to be orderly. How to make it easier for the adults. But to be fair, that is also teaching us self-control, discipline, and in a way, politeness. Because I personally like the, hey, line up, you were first, that's cool, a lot more than let's throw elbows to get through the door.
Yeah, I get your point, but I don't agree. I think it's all about being submissive and being controlled, you know. Look at the back of the person, and I hear them telling them.
You're saying that, but what other option are you talking about?
I'm saying how they teach the kids, making it so important for them to stand in the lines and face your, look at the back of the neck of the person in front of you and keep your hands to your side. And
yeah, I only really experienced that in 1 or 2 schools growing up. But then again, I'm 55. You're born when?
78.
Okay, so there's exactly 10 years between us. There's 7 years between me and my brother who is older. And that is one of the boomerest motherfuckers.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's been much difference because I see it still happening.
Well, no,
I go
we're both in that
elementary.
we're both in that Generation X, though.
It's happening still today with these little kids. I've seen it when I go to the school. I've seen it. Talking to my youngest, she's in elementary school right now. They do it to them. Still happening the same. It's like it's so important to teach them to submit. You know, to
see. You call it submit. Some people call it discipline. Try to be orderly. You're looking at it and approaching it as a completely negative. I'm not approaching it as a completely positive, but damn, if you don't teach them some sort of discipline and order in some way, how are you going to get them to stand still or follow the instructions for a job?
Well, that's all we're teaching them how to do is learn how to be factory workers. Everybody's going to be a factory.
Another generalization, negative shot at things like that. What is another way? You're so busy to shoot stuff down, but you have no other way, or you're not even trying to understand first what you're saying is such a bad thing. Yes, and see, you notice I mentioned both ways. I don't agree with that. See that whole stare at the back of the neck and all that? The only thing I agreed to was the put your hand on the shoulder of the one in front of you for distance. That way you're not walking on each other's ankles. Because if you don't do it, if the hands by the side, that stops people, kids, the energy, the youngers like that, they're going to be pushing and pulling and slapping and stuff like that. I understand why. You have to understand why. That is a patriotism thing, and that goes back to back then, which no one cares about now because they've turned patriotism into a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the people that didn't have a problem with them taking under God out of the Pledge of Allegiance. Considering it was added after the Pledge of Allegiance was actually made and been done.
Yeah, I always had a problem with them forcing me to stand for the dang, my brain is not working. I'm tired.
The allegiance, but why? Why did you have a problem with it?
The problem was because what if I didn't want to stand? I don't have no option.
Okay, so in other words, it was about you.
It was about me and how I feel in that moment. What if I don't want to stand?
I just don't want to be told what to do.
Right.
It was rebellion.
I don't want to be told what to do all the time.
Well, that's just it. It was rebellion. It wasn't based on any real logic or anything like that. It was just based on how you felt.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's the whole thing. You know, did you ever at any point go, well, why do they want me to do this? What is this about? Did you ever try to do the discussion, or did you just rebel against it?
I didn't care why or
exactly.
what it was about.
Yeah.
All I know is I wasn't feeling it, and I don't like that.
I'm not feeling it. I don't want to do that. Exactly. And that goes to, and then there's an assignment. Oh, well, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. And then the teacher says something you don't like. Well, I don't like you. I'm not going to listen to you anymore. There's a reason. You have to understand that going all the way back. Never mind. I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but at the same time, one, you have to come with the question of why it's being done, what's being done at certain ages. Two, a lot of bad habits have been carried on from the early days of teaching. Back I mean, okay. Okay, here's something that we need that's really interesting. If you take a picture of a shopping center 100 years ago and put it next to a shopping center today, can you visualize the differences you see in the way it's built, the lighting, and all of that? If you were to take a car from 100 years ago and put it against a picture of a car today, are you going to see something the same or entirely different?
The basic structure is going to be.
It's going to be something entirely different. You're barely going to recognize it from the original. Yeah, it's got 4 tires square. That's about it. So if you take a picture of a classroom from 100 years ago and a classroom from today, you're not going to see any real difference, are you?
And you're saying that's
why the education, maybe that's why the education system is so far behind.
100 years behind.
Maybe that's what you're talking about. No, I wouldn't go 100 years behind, but that what I'm saying is that is an example. You know, we have advanced in everything in our lives. Even a book printed 100 years ago and a book printed today, bound hardback, they look completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this has been put into our system, but there's 2 places that look the exact same today, damn near, as they did 100 years ago. Our schools and our prisons.
Mm.
And if you take a picture of both of them, how much different do they look?
They look very similar.
Maybe this is something we should start looking at.
It's the school to prison pipeline, and you're right.
It's the environment. Maybe our kids might start doing better
if we change the environment. Because even the desks look the same.
If the jokes about school being a prison went back to being freaking jokes.
Even the desk, the desks that they sit in, the school desk, they look the same. That's crazy.
I guarantee you someone out there has done some sort of video on what I just said and has pictures. If not, I might try to stitch one. I don't know. That's a good one. And I need to remember. I'm going to have to clip that. 237. Okay. I'm going to have to clip some of that too.
All right, man. I'm going to have to wrap it. I'm tired as hell. I'm going to be back tomorrow. Hopefully I get some rest and do a better show. I wasn't that on point, but
are we supposed to call Pat or Deuce on the Fridays?
Anytime when I come on late, Deuce can't come on all the time because of his job, but right. Pat was probably just asleep.
Yeah, see, I knew to call him the other night because you said to.
Yeah.
But if that's a regular thing, let me know, and I'll do my post that I'm going on, call him, and then, or I'll call him.
It's a regular thing for Friday and Saturday because Pat works all the time, but he just, when I come on late, he be asleep by then, and then he don't get none of the notifications. That's all.
See, I try to give you a good 10-15 minutes by yourself. Even a lot of time I'm sitting here listening, or if I'm here, but I'll give you your 10 or 15 minutes to lead in, tell what you want from the show. And
well, let me ask you this, because the name of the show was Lazy Overrides Logic. What do you think that means? Or what does that mean to you? Or does it mean anything to you? Lazy Overrides Logic.
That just reminds me that some people need a Google University diploma.
What do you mean?
You know, they're a graduate of Google University. They are experts in the matter.
Mm.
They took 10 minutes. They looked up 5 web pages.
Mm.
they can now argue with someone who's had 10,000 hours experience in the field.
They saw 2 TikTok videos.
Well, here's what I always like to say. Football players can watch 10,000 hours of other people playing football, and they're considered experts. It's considered research. But if you watch 10,000 hours of Pornhub, you're considered a freak.
You are a freak.
Okay, no, that would be the guy with one tiny arm and one Hulk arm.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna have to wrap it. I'm tired as hell, and I gotta be to work in the morning. I work another double tomorrow. Hopefully, I can get some rest. Maybe I'll get a break or something. I hope they don't have me closing. I was closing tonight, so that's why I was late coming on the show.
How are you doing this rodeo season?
We were
Last
slow.
couple of weeks.
We've been slow.
We've been getting steady nights.
We've been slow, but we're far from the rodeo.
No, it's not that though. It's people will pass up because they're going to the rodeo, so they don't go out to eat. But then again, the place I work is the customers are basically Florida. I mean, old people and their parents. So a lot of them don't end up going to the rodeo, or have some event they do on the rodeo committee, and they go and do that, and then 6 or 8 of them come and do a rodeo dinner after or before for planning.
Oh, we've been getting some people coming drunk and late after they're leaving the rodeo. Coming in the restaurant late and they're already drunk as hell.
Oh, we got old people hours. I
Eating
love
desserts and shit like that. Yeah,
we're 9 o'clock on Friday, Saturday, and 8 o'clock the rest of the week.
I wish it was like that. We close at 11 on Friday and Saturday. That's why it took me so. And I was closing tonight, so I couldn't get out of there till 11. I hope I'm not closing tomorrow. I'll be getting out of there at 11 again, or past 11. But anyways, peace and love. Thank y'all for joining. Thank y'all for listening. We'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with better stuff. All right. Peace.